Welcome back everybody to another video. We're going to be covering the Scourge of Ghyran Freeguild Cavaliers today to kind of see whether this is as big a buff as it kind of seemed on the first day. Now this is a video that I had to redo a little bit of because since I created this entire presentation, we have continued to get more information. For example, the cost of other things dropping in armies. And so I had a whole list comparison section that we're cutting because I need to redo those lists with all the new information that we have. And also since I made this, like the battle plans and stuff came out, and there's more of a reason to run MSU units of Cavaliers than there was before, which is a good thing for their ability, which we'll talk about, but also affects list composition. So I've taken the lists out and we're just going to take a look today at a few things. So first of all, we're going to compare the old to the new Warscrolls. We're going to compare the stats on and off the charge for these units of Cavaliers, and then we're going to compare to other Cities of Sigmar hammer options. The first thing we have to look at are the Warscrolls for these two different Cavalier options. Now, the original ones they're very similar. You know, there's the same amount of move and save and wounds and all that kind of thing. The big difference are two things. One, the Cavalier weapons have changed and they are now 2 attacks rather than 3 attacks. This is a significant debuff. However, the new weapons have +1 to hit compared to the old ones. They hit on 3s now, which is a really big buff. And we'll look at the math of this all later on. At the end of the day, lots of attacks generally is really good though. And then the other thing is that we lose the Impact Mortals, the Devastating Charge ability, and instead we get the Red Work ability, which allows you, if the unit is in combat and has not charged this turn, that you can pick this unit and one friendly Freeguild Cavalier Marshal or Freeguild Marshal Griffin within this unit's combat range to be the targets. You roll a dice and you add 1 to the roll if there's fewer models in this unit than there are in the enemy units that you are in combat with. So on a 4+ for the rest of the turn, the targets count as having charged. So you can make your Cavaliers and a hero that is with them count as having charged, which would then turn on the charge +1 damage for this unit, which is a really big deal. If you are new to Cities of Sigmar, you might look at the Cavaliers and think, wow, what an amazing unit. But when you actually get into a match, you find that once they've charged, they've done some damage, they tend to drop off a cliff. Their damage is incredibly lacking and they're really just turned into a tar pit that's going to hold an enemy in place for a long time because of those 3 wounds and that 3-up save. So we can take a look at the heroes that this empowers to see if this is even worth it, because you don't actually have to bring a hero. If you bring the Freeguild Cavalier Marshal, then you do get access to use Run Down the Foe, which is a once per battle ability. Now, if you are using the Freeguild Cavalier Marshal and you're also using Cavaliers, and if they've both charged, then you're probably activating this the first chance that you got, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be at full power or that you're going to have, you know, your Cavalier Marshal alive later on. And this is an incredibly impactful, you know, ability. So I think that this is not likely the reason that you're going to bring him, because he has no charge effects otherwise. He does not get charge +1 damage for his Master Forged Cavalier Sword. The Freeguild Marshal on Griffin has a charge +1, and I put the damage down below, but when you have such few attacks, these damage charts are not super accurate. Like you can see that, yes, like the damage barely goes up, like not even a full point for having charged. But really, this is a swingy unit that can do lots of damage with or without the charge, and that's always going to be the case. It's hard to map it out compared to, let's say, when you have all of these attack buffs and you have like 40-50 attacks you know, that you're rolling, then the damage tends to average out a little bit more than just like a single unit attacking. So in this case, it is just nice for the Freeguild Marshal to have that +1 damage, even if you don't spike super high. If you at least get 1 attack in, it is doing more damage, and so that is good, and it's fun to have that, you know, playability. But I'm actually going to say that it's not essential to have a hero present for the red work. You might want to have a hero present for a different reason, which we're going to talk about soon. And then the bonus will be that the red work will count them as having charged, which is actually important as well if you were to use a strike them down order. So that's another reason to hit 2 units, but that means you also have to have enough heroes to use strike them down that many times. So we'll get more into all of this in just a little bit here. So we can see the stat comparisons between the Index Cavaliers and the Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers, and this is a reinforced unit versus a reinforced unit, and you can see that the Index Cavaliers have a little bit more damage, and that actually makes sense because they have that +1 attack. So there's no all-out attack here. There's no strike them down for +1 attacks or draw steel or anything like that. We're just doing a basic comparison at this. If you get both of them into combat in the charge, what are you going to be expecting? And the Index Cavaliers are a little bit stronger because they have that extra attack. And they also have impact mortals, which are going to do a little bit more damage. 3 to 4 mortals is what I estimated. If you want to pause the video and see my explanation for it, it's right down there below. So now let's start to factor in the strike them down order, because the more attacks you give, the more that 3 up to hit can factor into actually helping out with those more hits kind of going through statistically. So when we have the strike them down order, all of a sudden the Cavaliers on Index are hitting 4 attacks per model, and then the Scourge of Ghyran are hitting with 3 attacks per model. And you can see the damage actually evens out. So 4 attacks on 4s and 4s is equal to 3 attacks on 3s and 4s. And that's just, I guess, statistically what happens here. But you still have the 3 to 4 impact mortals. And that means that the Cavaliers on Index still have that little bit of strength for, compared if you're just judging them on the initial charge, where they both get the charge bonus for sure. And I also put a 5-pack here, just the MSU size of the Cavaliers for Scourge of Ghyran, just so you can kind of see with strike them down on the charge, you have, if you're up against a 4-up save, that's almost 8 points of damage, which isn't terrible. And keep in mind, we can now think about, well, that 8 points of damage is going to be very possible that you can do that again and again because of the red work ability, which allows them to have charged, where if we take a look at so this is 5 Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers versus 10 Index Cavaliers. The Index Cavaliers, they're reinforced, but they don't have a charge bonus. And then the MSU Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers do have a charge bonus, and they do have strike them down, which you're hopefully going to be giving them with a hero that's accompanying them. And you can see that the MSU actually does more damage than the reinforced. And the reason this is important to compare is because Index Cavaliers, once they've charged, they're locked into combat. That left side is going to be their combat profile. Yes, you can all-out attack. Yes, you can use Talia 1 turn to give them +1 to wound. But otherwise, they're going to be kind of locked into not getting charge-based bonuses, whereas the Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers are going to get those charge bonuses whenever the red work is a successful roll. They'll be able to get various buffs that allow them to do more damage, and so you're actually getting more value out of the MSU. Now, with MSU, you're going to have less wounds and they'll be wiped off more quickly, so you have to be more strategic with how you use them, whereas the 10 Index Cavaliers, they cost 10 points per Cavalier unit that you put in, so there is a value there as well, and there is actually still a reason to use Index Cavaliers this season, and you can't use both, by the way. So what does this all mean? The old Cavaliers do more damage on the charge, but not by a significant amount, but the impact mortals can swing that damage. Once a reinforced Index Cavaliers is off the charge, they will be outperformed by a 5x MSU unit of Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers that succeed on their charge ability, have the strike them down order, and also the draw steel heroic trait, which we're going to look at in a bit, which is another charge bonus that's from the Scourge of Ghyran pack that we got. But if they get all their charge stuff, and remember the MSU Scourge of Ghyran, because they're a 5-pack or less, it's likely that they're going to have the +1 to roll, which means over 50% of the time they will get the red work, and they will then have the ability to have charged, +1 damage, +1 attacks from strike them down, +1 damage from draw steel. So also a 5x unit of Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers will have a much better shot. Oh, sorry, I just said that. Oh my goodness, I'm getting ahead of my notes here. And keep in mind that this ability will also make that Cavalier Marshal or that Freeguild Marshal on Griffin count to having charged, which raises their damage or enables an ability for them. But the new Cavaliers are going to be more expensive, not only in their points cost, but in the investment in heroes to get the most out of them, because you're going to want that strike them down order constantly. And you also want to bring a hero in on a charge bonus to use and to be able to use a draw steel heroic trait. And this means that you're going to run a Cav Marshal or a Marshal on Griffin, who incidentally can keep up with a free Roman Cavalier. Now, that's not mandatory, right? It depends on what kind of game you're playing. If the Cavaliers haven't gone very far, then you could use any hero. And I see that people are theory crafting already, and they're going to be using their Relic Envoy, or their Marshal with Relic Envoy as their draw steel holder. So the next question, though, that I have is this better already than what we already had access to in Hammers and Drakespawn as hammer units for Cities of Sigmar. So next, we're going to talk about Draw Steel, which I really should have already put into this presentation. And so what I'm probably going to do is in edit, I will go and put this little text previously in the presentation so that people can read what it says when I talk about all this, capability. So basically, this is a new heroic trait that we get where if a unit has charged this turn, if that hero has charged this turn, you pick a friendly Cities of Sigmar human unit that also charged and is wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target, and you give them +1 attacks to the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. So this is a extra strike them down order. And you need to have a hero accompanying your Cavaliers to do this. Now, it can be other units as well. And so that's another reason to put it on to your, Relic Envoy Marshal that's already going to be in most lists. But this could be used with any hero that's going to be able to keep up with the Cavaliers, or that if the Cavaliers aren't going that far, that they can then be, buffed by them. So moving on to some comparisons here. So Cavaliers are still far off the damage of the non-human hammers in Cities of Sigmar, but that was to be expected. So what you can see here is we've got from the left a MSU Scourge of Ghyran Cavalier, a reinforced Scourge of Ghyran Cavalier that has Strike Them Down, and then the Drakespawn Knights with Strike Them Down, Drakespawn Knights with Strike Them Down, and Bestial Instincts to give their mounts an extra attack, and then Hammerers with Strike Them Down. And that's not even including that they can get +1 rend from a prayer, which will then bump up each of those damage categories further up this chart for the extra rend. And you can see Hammerers are just an insane amount of damage because they always hit on the +2 and they get so many attacks. It's going to be 2 attacks per hammerer, but it's actually 3 with Strike Them Down. And so we're looking at 61 attacks with the champion. Still though, this does not account for the draw steel weapon, or sorry, draw steel heroic trait. So we can take a look at that next. So in the best case scenario, you're going to have brought a hero that's keeping up with the Cavaliers, has the draw steel heroic trait equipped. But remember, if you do this, then you are saying goodbye to Master of Ballistics, which maybe isn't so bad considering that shooting is going to get a bit of a debuff with all the obscuring, although I still think Master of Ballistics is so freaking good. But either way, this is now the reinforced Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers. They've got Strike Them Down and Draw Steel, which means they have 4 attacks per Cavalier. And when you get all of this going, they start to catch up a little bit more to the other units, but they're still not quite as strong. And that's okay because they don't cost as many points. They're not the same hammer type unit, and keep in mind that you have to bring quite a bit of support to make this happen because you're adding in heroes, you're adding in heroic traits, you're locking yourself out of other points and other traits or things that you want to be using to do this. And then every turn you have to kind of gamble on whether you're going to get a 4-up or a 3-up, depending on how many units you're in combat with, for the red work to activate again, so that you can use Strike Them Down again, and so that you can use Draw Steel again. So once we get off of the charge though, this is where the Freeguild Cavaliers could do a bit more work. And so we can look again across this chart here, and it's the same units that we had before, but these are Drakespawn Knights with no charge, and again, no charge, but Bestial Instincts, and Hammerers no charge. But in this case, I've given both the Cavaliers Strike Them Down on the charge, and you can see for the reinforced unit, that they compare really closely to these other units. And so that means that after that charge turn, because the Drake Spawn and the Hammerers, they don't get to recharge. That's not a thing they get to do. All of a sudden, whenever the Cavaliers get the red work ability off, it makes for a much more comparable damage output, which is very nice. So what does this all mean? It means that the best case scenario is very impressive. The same can be said for the old Cavaliers as well, but because they also get access to draw steel. You know, that's still usable for the old Cavaliers, but the new Cavaliers take more advantage of extra attacks because they have a 3+ to hit. Elves and dwarves are still better with less investment. So the Hammers damage is baked right into their Warscroll. They need minimal buffs to go higher, and you just bring them and they just do damage. The Drake Spawn also have built-in methods to keep a higher damage output even if they haven't charged, and they don't need a hero need them, although they do want that order for the charge. Even so, after they've damaged somebody, their damage on non-charge turns is still really solid. The Scourge of Ghyran Cavaliers need several things to go their way. They need the red work roll to succeed. They need strike them down order to be given by a hero or by the relic envoy, and they need a draw steel heroic trait to be given wholly within 12 by an accompanying hero, which means you're probably not giving them the relic envoy. Although if you have multiple units of Cavaliers, then maybe some of them will just get strike them down, and another group of Cavaliers that have a hero with them will be getting the draw steel heroic trait. If the red work fails and they don't get the charge bonus, then their damage is going to be really minimal. As you can see in the little chart that I put down below, that is their damage output without any sort of charge bonuses, buffs, etc. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I also really hope that I didn't make any mistakes with my math, and if I did, you can just comment down below, point that out, and I'll try to improve that in the future. I did double check every single calculation, or not, I didn't calculate it, but I used a website to calculate it. But I did double check all of that. I put it all through multiple times, and I don't think that I missed anything, so I really am hoping that it looks good. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about using the old Cavaliers versus the new Cavaliers. How many Cavaliers you're going to run? Are you going to go minimum sized units, or are you going to go reinforced? And what are some of your test lists looking like? I'm excited to share in the future, hopefully, some lists for some ideas that I have for Cities of Sigmar, but I'm going to revamp some of those lists that I thought of because of all of the new information that's come out. Anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all in another video soon enough.